how do you overcome this devastation? I mean, physical devastation, emotional trauma, loss, you're unable to be fit for service now. How did you, when you kind of come through in the hospital, I guess, what happens next?
So in the beginning, in the very beginning, I'll tell you, it was elation. Like I was so
I'm happy to be alive.
Happy to be alive.
I'm here, I'm alive.
Yes.
I'm going to see my family.
Exactly. And I was just so thankful to be alive. I remember like when I first came to, my commanding officer was there and the master chief was there. So the first thing I really remember is one, I tried to talk and I couldn't. I was just pushing air, which was really weird. And I remember the nurse said, Lieutenant, you've been shot in the face, you are trached, you're wired shut, you're not going to be able to talk. I was like, okay. So I motioned and they brought me a piece of pen and paper and I asked, my first questions were, are the guys okay? Wow. I said, has my wife been notified? And do I still look pretty? and that's, I don't know, man, it's that positive. I think it was all those lessons had come back together. Like I did not care what happened in that moment. I wanted to know that they were okay. The guys were okay. Like nobody had died, and that my wife was aware. And then I was just trying to be funny. And so that was kind of the first thought. And then it was just elation. And I was on super heavy drugs, which I've never done drugs. So, but as that timeline progressed, by the time 96 hours later from the time I was wounded, I was in Bethesda, which is a testament to our medevac system. Like in 4 days, I went from Baghdad to Balad, where they treat head injuries and they stabilized me. And then they moved me to Germany, where they had more stabilization surgeries. And then they flew me to Bethesda, Maryland. So that was 96 hours I was back.
Back in the U.S.?
Yep.
Wow. So did they stitch you up in the first day, or are they just kind of like putting gauze over it? How?
No, they stitched me. I mean, yeah, because they had to stop, all the bleeding and stabilize.
And then they do reconstructive surgery later, like, right. Okay.
Yeah, so they've got to repair the damage and stabilize you, and then all the reconstruction happens later. And that's where the elation start to wear off.
Like, man, this is painful.
And several things happen. One, I remember laying in bed in Bethesda, and the first thing, like many of us, when something bad happens, replaying it in your mind. And like, if I had done this, if I had done that, if I had moved left, if I had moved right. And I was really kind of kicking myself. And then finally I was just like, dude, stop. Like one,
nothing you can do about it.
Nothing you can do about it. Like, and two, you did things according to how we've trained. Like, so put that out of your mind and you need to move forward. But I remember the second point of really reality setting in was my sister was getting married and we were supposed to go to the Virgin Islands for the wedding in October. And I remember the nurse coming in and I said, hey, how long is it going to take to put me back together? Because one, I need to get back to my guys. Two, I got to go to my sister's wedding. And and she was just incredulous, like looking at me like, Lieutenant, like, it's going to take years to put you back together.
You're done. Yeah.
And that was like such a shock to me.
I know.
And depressing. And I remember thinking to myself, like, so my special operations career is over. I'm going to be permanently disfigured and I'm going to be forever disabled.
Wow.
Because they were also talking to me about amputating my arm.
Amputating it.
Because I had no use of, at this point they knew I had taken 2 rounds and it effectively destroyed my elbow. The first round hit me in the base of the humerus and just shattered my humerus. And the second round hit me on the inside of the elbow, which shattered both heads of the ulnar radius.
Oh, man.
So, and I had no use of my left hand. There were, pretty extensive nerve damage. So the doctors were talking about amputating. And the only reason I still have an arm is the head of orthopedics at Bethesda at that time was a former SEAL. And he said to me, I'm going to do everything I can to save you.
Wow,
and
man.
I think if anybody else, they would have taken my arm.
Wow, really? And he was like, I'm going to do whatever it takes.
And he did. And that, amazing. And that journey was incredible. But I remember feeling depressed. Like, where do I go from here? But this is where this journey of failure, redemption, really coming to understand what it is a leader, finally, not finally, but kind of came to a intersection. And there were several things that happened. The one last thing that kind of made me come to this pinnacle, or this intersection, was about all that time. I had somebody else that had come into the room, and they were having a conversation with me, and then I started to drift off. But I was hearing what they were saying, and they started having a conversation, thinking I was asleep.
Like you had already passed out, or yeah.
About how overwhelming the hospital was, and how terrible it was for all these wounded warriors, and how, you know, they were never going to be the same. They were going to be broken. It was a victim mindset. And I was hearing it, and they left. They were kind of walking out as they were having this conversation. When my wife came back in, like, the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Like, I woke up and was just angry. When she came back in, I wrote to her and I said, never again. I said, that is not going to happen again. Nobody's going to come in this room and feel sorry for me. And this was where, like, this moment occurred where I was like, this is bigger than you. Like, this is, you've been for 2 years, you've been walking this path of lead yourself, lead others, lead always. And around me, in that hospital were wounded, other wounded guys that had been shot up, guys missing limbs, you know, individuals burned. In the room next to me, there was a young Army kid who had a penetrating brain trauma, so he had a severe traumatic brain injury. And his wife, I remember watching his wife, and they had a brand new baby. And she was dealing with this husband who no longer could cognitively function. And I thought to myself, dude, like, this sucks, but, like, you've been through worse. You've been through BUD/S, you've been through Ranger School, you've been through the hardest journey you've ever been through, this leadership failure, and fought back. And now you need to live everything that you've talked about. Like, you have to, these guys look up to us, and I already knew it. I had guys that wanted to come into the room and meet me. And this was, I recognized, this is what leading on. You can lead from any position, even a hospital bed. And all it is choosing positivity in the face of negativity. And it was in that moment, and that's what I tell everybody. In this life, the greatest gift you have as a human is choice. You have a choice. Nobody makes you a victim. Yeah. Nobody holds a gun to your head and tells you, well, it's not fair and I can't do it because of X, Y, or Z. That's BS. Mm-hmm. There may be more adversity or obstacles in your path, but you control whether you get up and drive forward or not. And that is the power of choice. That is the power of positivity to drive forward despite whatever adversity stands in your path. And that was kind of the epiphany moment. And when my wife walked back in, I was like, never again. Nobody's allowed to come in my room with that mindset, and I refused to have it. And I wrote out that sign, and it said, attention to all who enter here. If you're coming in this room with sadness or sorrow, don't bother. The wounds that I received, I got in a job that I love, doing it for people that I love, defending the freedom of a country that I deeply love. I will make a full recovery. What is full? That is the absolute utmost physically. I have the ability to recover, and then I'm going to push that about 20% further through sheer mental tenacity. This room you're about to enter is a room of fun, optimism, and intense rapid regrowth. If you're not prepared for that, go elsewhere.
Wow.
And we signed it, the management.
That's cool. That's cool.
And it took on a life of its own. I put it on the door, or I had my wife put it on the door, and I said, nobody's allowed in the room until they read this. And never having any idea of the impact that it would have on others, because I'll be honest, in the moment, I really kind of wrote it for myself. Like, hey, man, here's my new mission statement that I'm going to live by. And it became that. And that's something I talk to a lot of people about, is having a mission statement that guides you in the dark times, having that light in the darkness, because there were some hard moments over the next 4 years, and especially in the first couple of years, where, like, crying my eyes out, like, this sucks, I'm in pain, like, I'm never going to be put back together. At one point, the nose I have now is the third nose they built. The first two failed. At one point, they had to cut all the tissue out, and I just had this hole in my face. I felt like a skeleton.
Oh, man, it's hard.
But that sign kept me on track. This is who I am. This is what I stand for. You're the overcome guy. Like, let's go. Set that example. Lead always. This is how we do it.
Right.
So that's what I tell people. That is the power of choice. That is choosing positivity in the face of negativity. And the thing is, when you do it for yourself, you never know the ripple effects it's going to have on the others around you. Because that sign has now gone on to motivate millions of people. I mean, it earned me an invitation to the White House to meet President Bush. It has been written about in other books. Secretary Robert Gates wrote about it in his book.
Wow.
First Lady Michelle Obama wrote about it not once but twice in her book.
Really?
It moved her so much.
Wow.
Wounded Warriors to this day write me. I didn't keep it. President Bush signed it and we had it framed and it hangs in the Wounded Ward at Walter Reed to this day.
Really?
Yep.
That's cool.
So that's the power of choice. So anybody who's like, I don't know if I can do this, or if well, you're a Navy SEAL or this or that, that's BS. You in this life, you can lay on the X and be a victim, or you can just get up and be a victor. And it doesn't guarantee success. It doesn't guarantee that there's not going to be pain. It doesn't guarantee that it's not going to be hard. It's going to be. But you will be better for it, and that's how you lead, and that's how you drive forward, and that's how you make a difference.
Right.
It was a really long journey of several years of coming to understand that all these pieces came together to be effective leadership and to have that mindset of positivity. So when I got wounded, I was probably in the best position in my life to go through that because I had just finished this other super hard journey